Sorry, I kept turning the video on and off because my nose started to run, and so I was like, while you were talking, I would like flip the screen off, go blow my nose real quick. What's going on, everybody? Thank you again for tuning in to Our Stories, Your Legacy. We're back again with a new episode of Real Talk, kind of a fire round episode like we have been doing for the past week. COVID, the pandemic is kind of winding down, and we started Real Talk kind of with the COVID-19 pandemic starting back in late March 2020. And it's about a year and a half later. We're still kind of in a pandemic, but things are starting to look positive and opening up. And who knows? From if you've been listening to our discussions, we have doubts of it being back to pre-pandemic levels. We're like entering a new world, and we don't know what's going on. Work is more flexible. People are used to being at home more. So people have kind of a anxiety of traveling and doing things again, even though most people are vaccinated. So who knows? And so thank you for coming back and listening again. Here's another Fire Round episode. Again, another Fire Round episode is basically what we discuss, anything hot or trending topic of the week, things that we come up with or things we heard in the news or etc. And so these are topics that usually get us inspired to kind of share our thoughts and discuss them in the moment. So a little bit about today's episode, social media. To scale it back a little bit, we were talking, I mentioned right in the beginning, this new world we're going into, it's going to be post-pandemic. And, there's a lot of people are a lot anxious about a lot of different things because, believe it or not, we're probably not going to go back to pre-pandemic levels. That's just probably something that is not going to happen for the rest of the world. So today's episode, we're talking about social media and how it plays into our world, right? So social media, it's a large, mostly integrated part of our lives in one aspect or another. It seems unavoidable, right? For most of us, especially with most of us connected, via phone. We find some ways to make use of it, or some ways we just interact with it, right? So there's so many ways that we deal with social media in our lives. And I'm talking about any type of social media, the popular ones, Facebook, MySpace, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok right now is the biggest one. But, social media, some can argue that social media apps are a waste of time. They're bad for our mental health, or they make us more disconnected from one another than we already are, right? Especially being in the pandemic. Others can say it's beneficial, though. It keeps us more connected, or it helps us in business. It helps us create and grow our own brand. It allows us to discover things around the world that we wouldn't typically have easily discovered if it wasn't for the internet or social media, for example, right? Or things that are trending, going viral. Those are key words of social media. With all that said, today we're going to have a fun discussion talking about what if we're living in a hypothetical in a virtual future where our only form of interacting in life is through the use of only one social media app. So we can only marry ourselves to one social media app to interact out in the world. So in this episode, we will imagine life without the physical world and wonder, what if we live life as we do now? Work, hobbies, personal, except you can only interact with the people and the world around you being tied to just one social media app. So what is that one social media app? We'll jump right into it after our roundtable introductions. So as always, before we begin, we're going to do a quick check-in with who is on the episode today. Of course, you got me and my brother from another mother, Tyler. How are you doing today, man?
Doing well. Survived this massive heat wave that we had up here in the Pacific Northwest. So
it's too crazy. Yeah. It's too crazy. Yeah, I underestimated it. And for a lot of you who are listening right now, if you're not from the Pacific Northwest, that 3-day heat wave over this past weekend of the date of this episode. So you figure that out. So the past 3 days of that weekend from Saturday and Monday was unprecedented, and a lot of people didn't expect it until it hit, and we were totally unprepared. Even I mean, to be honest, we didn't even know that this was going to happen until like literally less than a week prior. That they're like, hey, by the way, there's this heat wave coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It drove a lot of people wild. And, a lot of people here in the Pacific Northwest were not used to having air conditioned central AC in the house, and so that was kind of tough. But I'm glad we all made it through as best as we can.
Yeah, no, we definitely managed here. Luckily, we had an AC unit. Like just because we have like just one of the little ones that rolls around. You can move it from room to room. Luckily, we had that from last year because living on a top floor of an apartment is no bueno in the summer. It's great in the winter when you don't have to turn your heat on because all the heat rises from the other apartments below you. But in the summer, it's horrible. So we actually invested in one last year. So I come this year, with this 110 degrees that just came out and was just like, hey, let's have fun kind of thing. It was crazy. So
Right.
luckily we had that to kind of help us, also being on a ground floor unit now in our place. So that's kind of helpful. So a lot of factors, but definitely was hot. I know I was outside for a lot of
Oh man.
like Saturday and Monday. Sunday not so much, but Saturday and Monday I was outside and whatnot, and it was pretty hot. I will say it wasn't as bad as I was gonna, as people were like, "Oh my God, we're gonna die." But
Yeah.
for us, it was a drier type of heat. I know some people would argue that being in the Pacific Northwest, we're next to the, ocean and stuff, so there is some humidity. Which, don't get me wrong, there's some humidity and all that stuff, but for the most part, it was dry. It wasn't like super humid, 80, 90% humidity like some of the coastal states on the
Yeah.
East Coast, and all of that. So wasn't too bad in that regard. But as you saw with all these things, like we had freeways, concrete's buckling and breaking apart, and
Yeah.
all these crazy things. Like we just don't have the infrastructure over here to really handle that stuff. So
Right.
we don't have AC or central air, that kind of stuff built into a lot of the homes that were built circa 1970, 1990 even,
Right.
and prior. So a lot of houses over here actually, kind of like the East Coast, are brick. So you have a lot of houses over here that are like brick if they were older houses, but with no central air or AC. You're basically having like a brick oven fire
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
of thing. So you're baking
Wood fire
pizza,
pizza stove.
yeah, wood fire pizza style. So it's crazy. So a
Yeah.
lot of us over here aren't used to it. Um, but overall, I'd say it wasn't too bad. We survived. We didn't have to book a hotel room or any of that stuff.
Right.
We made it work.
That was another phenomenon too, but we'll get into
Yeah.
that later.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
we
And now we're back
survived.
to cooler weather, man.
Yeah, I know it's just crazy thing because then it went from 110 and it dropped down to 82 next
Yeah,
day.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
like,
right now the weather is like 68,
yeah,
and the past 3 days, this time at night, it was still looking at,
oh yeah,
like 80, 85 degrees. And so,
yeah. I know walking because we had to get in like 45-minute walks as part of like the 75-day hard uh,
yeah,
challenge thing. So we weren't going to walk in the middle of the day. So we had to do our evening walks and runs and stuff in the evening. But we were going at like 10:30 at night, and it was still 85 degrees, and we're like, this is brutal.
jeez.
So now, when at the time we're recording this, now it's over here, it's 64 degrees. So it's quite the drop. Today was very windy, 64,
Right,
gray clouds, not raining. It was never going
right,
to rain, but it was just kind of cloudy and all that stuff. So typical Washington weather, usual Washington
right.
weather, but yeah, so.
Yeah, it was fun times, man. It was fun times.
Oh yeah, no, lots of stuff going on. We survived the heat wave, and now being end of June, we
Yeah.
as a state are opening up 100% as far as the business side goes.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
So that's happening today. As of today, most of those things are open. Obviously, there's going to be some restrictions in certain areas and all that stuff, but for the most part, 100% open, which kind of hesitant in some ways, kind of anxious. Some people are going to be just because of we're opening up 100%, but then you also have the World Health Organization coming out and saying like, oh, the Delta variants of COVID is coming out. So even if you're
Yeah.
vaccinated with both shots, you should probably still consider a mask because this variant of the of the strain is or the variant of the strain. The strain is the variant
Yeah.
at this point, but that the Delta strain essentially is like wrecking havoc right now, and
Yeah.
it's all over the place, and that's a little bit stronger, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird time. So welcome to the official 52 episode 52 full year at this point, 52 weeks worth of pandemic related episodes. So
Right.
there
That's
we
right. And that's a perfect segue to jumping right in where it's like, you know, even though from the face level, we're talking about our favorite, pretty much our favorite social media app, or, if you're not a big social media app user or like a heavy user, but you had to pick one app to kind of live by and live with and trust in its ability. Let's make it easy. So trust in its current ability. So we're not gonna fantasize about Mark Zuckerberg buying out everything, all the apps, and then putting it in one. So we're talking about, as of the date of this episode, the current usability of social media apps and what we believe it in terms of its current functionality of how it will help us thrive in a future, in a virtual, in a hypothetical virtual world. And so kind of like a pin note about this episode, again, real talk, kind of based on the trend of, not a trend, but based on the theme of us living through these pandemic times and still uncertainty, with, like you mentioned, with the Delta strain. And so take it as it is. We're going to have a fun discussion today. It could just simply be about our favorite social media app, or it could be deeper. It could be about, that we're hinting, that we're feeling like the world is not going to be the same post pandemic. And, more than ever, we're relying on technology to help us, live as normal as possible. Right. We're already looking at Zoom and, Microsoft Teams, things that are already helping us work flexibly instead of in the office or in a physical office. So why not have fun and talk about how social media can continue to evolve in our lives? So take it how you will. I know we're going to have a good, fun time jumping right into it.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'll start with the question, Tyler, and we'll both kind of like play off each other on it. But so, yeah, again, just as a reminder from the intro, imagine a life without the physical world. We are all in the matrix. Our mind is programmed into a virtual world that we don't physically walk in. However, the only way for you to interact with anything, so imagine your life is the same now, except you're not physically in it. What one social media app would you choose to marry yourself to, believing in its current functionality that it would champion all aspects of your life, to make it as successful as possible?
Yeah, I think that's was a little challenging because I think it just depends on what you define as social media. You
Right.
know, um, the typical social media that you kind of see is obviously Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, that kind of stuff. YouTube, I guess, would technically be
Yeah.
social media as well, with whatever it does now. So begs the question of like, what do you define as social media? Would you consider like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, those type of things? Would you consider those social media? That kind of stuff. I don't think that would be social media necessarily. I think that's more of a way of communication. Um, so that being said, if we're talking just like mainstream social media where, you can go to post pictures, do all that stuff, get your news, all that stuff. I think for me personally, I think I would stick to Twitter, just because you can still have your conversations there. You can still post your videos there. You can post GIFs, all of that stuff. Hey, your hashtags are still relevant there. You can, throw DMs around, do whatever. Get that. I mean, to be fair, I usually go to Twitter anyways, just to get my news. I feel like sometimes the news posts to Twitter quicker than it does like actually announcing on their own channel or on the TV or radio, if you listen to the radio for your news, that kind of stuff. I think it is become super relevant on Twitter. I feel like that's where it started. Everyone was kind of, we were limited to our character count when it first came out. Obviously, that was extended a little bit, but there's so many things that they've added to Twitter as far as like, continuing to build on their success and continuing to have people come back. So I know on, Instagram or Snapchat, really it started with Snapchat with like little stories and all that stuff. They added that to Instagram, they added that to Facebook, they added that to Twitter. So, I mean, how do you adapt and how do you keep building upon a successful thing already? It's one of those things you kind of just, you kind of yoink the idea and make it your own as well, or someone might say yoink and twist. So you take an idea and then you make it your own, you twist it a little bit. But obviously it's going to be very similar to what other people or other things have done in the past or currently doing. So I feel like Twitter kind of hopped on that train as well. So they added like that function that you can actually do your story, just a quick thing if you wanted to kind of update people, show them what you're doing, that kind of stuff. I think they call it Fleet. So there's a lot of things you can do there. Instagram, you can post GIFs, but not really post GIFs at the same time. So it's one of those things. I think for me, because I usually go to Twitter already for the news and updates and all of that stuff, traffic alerts, all that stuff gets posted on there before it gets posted anywhere else. So I feel like I'm already acclimated to say that Twitter would be my one social media platform that I stick with. I most of the other ones I don't really use. Facebook, I only use that because I obviously there's stuff I have to do for work on that one, so I still have an account there. Instagram and Twitter are probably the ones I use the most, but if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go to Twitter. That's kind of my short-ish answer, I would say. We could go way into metrics and all that stuff, but
hey, and no, keep it simple. And I don't know if our listeners hate this, but hey, we're like, closest of friends. We've known each other for almost decades now. It's crazy to think about, like, we've known each other for like almost a decade or more. And it still feels like, it hasn't even been that long, but when you think about it, it's like, man. And so for us, when we always get on the show, we always have a lot of things in common, and I know from a listener, sometimes they prefer like, butting heads or like different opinions, but hey, those episodes come when they come. But most times it's fun when we know that we all can be in agreement. And I'm sure we're not the only ones in our listeners here. Because the one idea in my head as I came across this question, exactly was Twitter. I mean, I'm not the heaviest social media user. Maybe I'm getting a little old. We talked about this before. I'm afraid to use TikTok, because I'm getting that old maybe this is how the older generation feels. So I let my nieces show me favorite videos on there. But Instagram basically is like you know the black market for social media, anyways, because things that you would find on Twitter is already copied and pasted in Instagram.
Mhm.
Videos that you would find on TikTok is already posted and copy and pasted in Instagram. So you get a little bit of both. But if I had to choose one that would you know make me feel the most successful in a hypothetical virtual world, that can express me and really um, bring out the spiritualness in me as best as I can via social media, Twitter, because I love to write, I love to read. So I love to write, and so you'll be able to. The character count is no longer there, but the coolest thing about Twitter is that they got those threads, right? I love reading people's threads, and basically, for those who don't know what we're talking about, or if I'm saying it wrong, a thread is like basically a mini, it's a novella, or like a mini story or a mini commentary that a user posted. And since Twitter does have a cap limit, not that small of a cap limit, but whatever fits your screen, they break it up into threads. So it kind of creates a big list of commentary and story that you can follow, and it's always some of the greatest things, and I love it. And then obviously below the thread, you got people interacting with it, putting their own comments or asking questions, or whatever they can to interact with it. And on top of that, you can still post videos. You can still post. Tyler said GIFs. I'm gonna say GIFs. We got to be a little different somehow. And you could still. And I agree with Tyler too. Like some of I don't really watch news channels anymore, right? Or what's out there, CNN, MSB, I don't know, your local news channels. But you get your trending news via Twitter because it tends to be a lot quicker, and you could search by topic as well, and you'll be amazed at how much information you can find. So Twitter is my go-to, and and that's about it. I think it captures everything, every part of my life. So I think this is a perfect segue to kind of lead into I'm gonna call it our speed round to kind of get us to the goal line of today's short and sweet episode. From the top of my head, so we both chose Twitter. So go ahead and fire off. The top three things is one. How would you use Twitter to effectively build relationships? Two, how to grow yourself, whether it's a brand, business, or just kind of getting yourself out there in terms of the virtual world. And then how would it be effective in a work life in a virtual world, right? So fire those three off. So go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah. What
Personal
was the
relationships.
first one again?
Personal relationships.
Personal relationships.
Yeah. In a virtual world, how would Twitter help you?
I think as far as like personal relationships go on Twitter, um, social media relationships are a little weird for me, anyways, because you talk about Twitch or YouTubers or streamers, all that stuff. These are the people you watch all the time, so you kind of feel like you have a relationship with them because you watch them all the time. Any video, any artist or YouTuber or whatever you can think of, you watch them, and then you almost feel like you know them. But that's the thing, that they are a personality that they put on a screen for your entertainment, kind of thing, right? So then we get into all of this parasocial, like friendships and stuff. So where it's parasocial, it's like, okay, you might know that person more because they put themselves out there, but obviously they're not going to be friends with you, kind of thing. So you have these parasocial relationships and all that stuff there that are kind of in one person's head, like, oh, you're my friend or whatever, I associate with you. Whereas that person on the other end of a screen is kind of like, I don't know any of these people. Like thousands of people might watch me, and I'm not your friend, kind of thing. So I think for personal relationships there, I think on Twitter at least, you can have your conversations back and forth. Obviously, you might deal with the whole catfishing issue or whatever might be out there because you're not talking face to face in person in real life, that kind of stuff. But at that point, if you're just working on friendships and all that stuff, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. Obviously, some people are going to go for looks or whatever that might be, and that's to each their own. As far as personal relationships go, you can talk in threads, do all that stuff, find what you have in common. Otherwise, you can just hop into DMs, you just have private conversations um, so that no one else has to really look at them. So you can kind of get more personal, talk about stuff, obviously, get to know one another, that kind of thing, which is a lot what people do anyways these days. This generation is very much technology based, a lot of friendships, a lot of all of that stuff, a lot of dating, all that stuff, apps, whatever it may be, is already social or tech in technology and all of that stuff in the social world that way. Very, very much phone based. You don't really see each other in person. In previous episodes, we've talked about it. Like I've played video games with people for probably 15 to 20 years at this point. And I may have never met them in person, but because of the way we talk to each other, have conversations, all of that stuff through either social media or popping on the video game and just chatting away. We would obviously consider ourselves friends and stuff, even though we haven't met each other in person. There have definitely been those people that I have met in person after, 10, 15 years of playing games or doing whatever, communicating online. And you kind of like, it's kind of weird because you're nervous to meet them in person, but then once you start talking, it's just like you pick up right where you left off as far as your social aspect goes. Because you're usually behind a screen of some sort. So that is my quick answer there.
Yeah. Second one. How would Twitter in a virtual world help you build your brand or help you build your own personal self and like put yourself out there in the world?
Yeah. So for that one, I mean, I think it's one of those things. I think there's already a formula out there as far as like getting your business, getting your brand out there. It's all about your marketing at that point. So many things are targeted for social media marketing anyways nowadays that, obviously there's courses and all of that stuff. Again, courses, that's all opinion based anyways. But there's certain ways, certain algorithms you have to do and follow, or tend to, I guess you could say, when it comes to kind of promoting yourself. You can obviously put stuff out there just as is. Obviously with Twitter and most social media things, you can do hashtags and all of that stuff to really brand yourself to a specific kind of niche, I guess you could say. So that would be the biggest thing, is just obviously you can throw your stuff out there, but if you hashtag it and all that stuff and you get put into separate categories, you can even go to look at what's trending to see what might get you more vision that way. So, and exposure. So you can do that. But that would be the biggest thing as far as like trying to build your personal brand as is. It only takes a few people to spread the word to their friends, and then they spread the word to their friends, and so on. So very much crowdsourcing at that point.
Yeah. No, you hit it on the head of you're revealing top secrets for us. We're hitting the 4D wall right now. Where this outside of this fun discussion, hypothetical. I mean, we're teaching you how to really be successful on Twitter right now.
Right.
But lastly, current work, right, or work life. How would Twitter help you stay successful in your current job, but in a virtual world?
Yeah, I think for my job right now, be a little weird, but I don't know. For my current role, I don't know how long I'll be in this said role or whatever. But of course, in this hypothetical, it's one of those things like the time here and now, I work in events. So once the pandemic hit, we saw a lot of events obviously get canceled. We couldn't do anything with social distancing guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. So you couldn't have large gatherings, large crowds, all of that. So what a lot of industries did was they came up with virtual events. So what that looked like was obviously like almost like a video game type of simulation, to where you signed in to this software. You get your little avatar, and you can walk around in this virtual world that was created specifically for this event. So you can build out buildings that you would typically go to for an in-person event. You can host whatever, a DJ party in the virtual world. So very much hopping into things like virtual spaces and kind of having voice chat and all that stuff. On obviously on Twitter, that's a little different. So um, you'd have to kind of like play around with it, but you can almost just hop in a giant group, do all these things. I don't recall Twitter doing really live. Well, no, you actually can do live video stuff on Twitter as well, streaming and stuff. So you could easily do that, where it's you all get together in this room and you're in a chat room. You can talk to things, and essentially it's like streaming at that point, but or essentially it is streaming. So that would kind of be your event stuff as far as work goes. So anything that you're putting on for work could be live streamed, and people can join when they want to. They don't have to feel obligated to be there in person.
Yeah.
They're more comfortable maybe at home, so they can just hop on that way and just, you know, hop into the conversation and contribute however they want to that way. So I think that's how that would happen with work in my current role, at least.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, Ben. And then, yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, again, I have to throw this out there. We're not sponsored by Twitter, but Twitter is a fun social media app to use. I find some of the funniest interactions on Twitter. That sometimes just has a good break to my day where I could just laugh at things. And so, personal wise, relationship wise, I think Twitter is a great option tool that I would love to be married to in a hypothetical virtual world where that's the only way we could communicate, because I could do it in words. I can throw it out there and see what words or what stories people have in common with me. And so it's one of those things where personal relationships, I think we could expand out and reach greater, a greater net of different people that we never thought we could be friends with or interact with before. And so in a personal relationship wise, I think that is one way that I think Twitter would be beneficial when it comes to like reaching my goals or hobbies or building myself or putting my name out there into the world. I mean, hey, creating threads or sharing an expertise that I know, or sharing something that I feel has benefited me and I want to share it with the world, like things that kept me grounded, kept me sane, or helped me grow. Putting it out there, in words or in visuals. Twitter, can make that spread, and make it go viral. And, you could definitely grow your expertise in there. Tyler mentioned a lot of it already. And so, it's one of those things where you just need a few people to kind of spread the word, and it just kind of keeps going and going, like a domino. And then lastly, for work life, for me, working with projects and project management kind of deal. It's one of those things where, I don't know, social media, you can kind of like form your own DMs or something, and have ways to kind of have personal chats, or you could open it up to the public for like people to like, discuss your project. I mean, there's so many ways that you could do it. You could show visuals. It's all in one. Again, we're not sponsored by Twitter, but this is our favorite app. So that's about it, and it was a quick little fun brain exercise. Tyler, you have any final words?
Um, Obviously you mentioned we're not sponsored by Twitter. It would sound like we are, but we're not. We're just those are the type of things we get into. We just like Twitter. It's very simple, very simplistic in a lot of ways. Obviously has nice features to it, but
Easy to
uh,
use. Yeah, easy to use.
yeah, easy to use for sure. That's what it is. A users are the most important part of anything, really. So obviously not sponsored, but hey, if you want to come in and sponsor us, awesome, cool, we'll take it. But you know, obviously use whatever social media thing you like. Obviously, I know we'll talk more about that in the closing, um, but yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what people say during this time, what that might change as far as like things that they've done, as far as anything really. I was going to say something along the lines of like um, the Great Recession, related to the pandemic in regards to people, stepping away from their jobs because they found that the virtual world and the virtual kind of remoting in and stuff was more to their liking. So now you have people that have been with companies a long time now leaving those companies because they found something that they enjoyed doing more, and they found something that they could actually do from home, or wherever. They didn't have to go to a physical place to get stuff done. So we'll see. That is obviously another topic for another time. But that was kind of my final thoughts. So we'll see how this goes and go from there.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And so we're gonna wrap it up on that point. And as always, we challenge our listeners. Hey, take this brain exercise, run with this question. Right? It's always a fun little discussion that you could have with your friends and your family. What is your favorite social media app that you currently use? And and discuss in a hypothetical situation, if you could only use one app to express every aspect of your life and make it as successful as possible, what app is that? And so and I'm sure we all use one app or another, and again, it's how you define social media app. It doesn't even have to be your typical TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. It could be forums, right? It could be Reddit. It could be YouTube. And so have that discussion, because the most important thing, like we always say each and every episode, is always keep the dialogue going, because that is how we learn and grow. Because I know for me and Tyler, and the rest of the team, will keep working on us, and we'll keep improving every week. And again, we appreciate the listen, we appreciate the feedback, the comments, the questions. And so, as always, we're going to keep seeing y'all next week. We're going to keep bringing more and more discussions, and we're looking forward to seeing you or having you listening in on us again every single week. So, have a good night. This is Our Stories, Your Legacy, and we'll see you next week.
Later.